Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today back with another Marvel Snap video. So a little bit of game news coming out today about the upcoming patch cycle, as well as a little bit of a break in OTAs during the month of May, and a upcoming buff in the next OTA scheduled for this Thursday. So let's talk about it. First up, we got the OTA and patch cycle. So April 24th, next OTA coming this week, and the patch on the 29th is going to be bringing with it snap packs. Also worth noting, if you're interested in the spotlights during the last spotlight week on April 29th, make sure to not update your game, because if you do update your game, you will not have a chance at that spotlight week, which includes a bunch of move cards and the new Hydra Stomper, and instead you'll have to either use tokens or snap packs if you want to acquire that card. Leading up to the acquisition update, I've got a lot of questions about, hey, is it worth pulling for spotlights before, or should I save my resources? And my general rule of thumb has been, if you can get at least 2 or more cards you actually want to play with out of a given spotlight week, it's probably not a bad idea to open before the system changes over. But if you're really only gunning for the new card, I really don't think there's too much harm in waiting. Anyway, back to the schedule. May 29th is going to be our next OTA after this coming one. So you might notice that there is a pretty big gap here, just over a month between OTAs, whereas normally they're 2-week intervals. And we did get a post about this. Apparently Second Dinner is going to be at a company offsite event during the normal OTA week. That would be on the 15th. So yeah, there's just going to be a little bit of a longer window between these OTAs, and then it'll get back to normal with the June 3rd patch, June 12th OTA, and the cycle will get back into the swing of things. And usually when they do this type of thing, like they do during the holidays in November and December, when they only do one OTA for the month, they try and make it a very eventful one. So here's hoping that the next OTA will be a little bit more eventful than the +1s we have been seeing in the last few. Speaking of eventful OTAs, though, we do have a little bit of a buff being received for Infinity Ultron. So Infinity Ultron is going from a 5.6 to a 5.8. This is a pretty big buff. A lot of people were speculating this card would get a buff. It had not the greatest performance upon its initial release. I'm still a little higher, I think, on the card than a lot of people have been. I think there's a lot of potential there. I did manage to make it work in a handful of decks, but I'm not surprised to see it getting a buff after looking at the larger stats. And I'm happy to see a card that has been, at least for me, the most fun card of the season, get a little bit more power put, so it can be more viable across a variety of different decks. In terms of how much this buff affects the card, I think it affects it quite a lot. I've played a bunch of Infinity Ultron, and the big thing about this card is it has a lot of variance. You have 6 stones, you're only getting 2 of them. Stones cost 3, so they take up pretty much a whole turn usually. Maybe you get like a location reduction, or you have some Wiccan energy or a Quinjet reduction or something like that. That can let you weave in another card with them, but a lot of the time, Ultron demands you take up a whole turn playing Ultron, and then you take up a whole turn playing the stones, and that was a pretty high cost for a pretty middling payoff. Some of the better combinations included things like getting the Power Stone and the Reality Stone, so you make Ultron a 6/12, and then you create a 12-power drone. That was pretty cool. But in general, some of the stones have felt a little bit more clunky. The Space Stone can be a little awkward, where you move something into the Ultron lane, but that's something that's a little bit more easy to play around because your opponent can just fill up that lane. The Time Stone has a lot of variance to it. You don't always have the biggest things in hand, so paying 3 energy for a 1-power card that's going to pull something randomly doesn't always have a great outcome. And I still think the weakest stone by far of the bunch is the Soul Stone. Soul Stone kind of channeling original Ultron energy, where it gives +2 power to a card in each of your lanes that is full. That's really the only stone of the bunch I would actually like to see maybe reworked or more substantially buffed. Maybe give +3 instead, because it is by far the weakest stone of the bunch in my time playing the card. But in general, I'm pretty happy with this. It really raises the ceiling of what this card can do. Now with the Power Stone, you end up with a 16-power Ultron, or 32 power if you get the Mind Stone, or another way of doubling it, which is a much more significant threat. And that also adds to the threat of Ultron's drone just being naturally bigger. Now the high roll of getting the Power Stone plus Reality Stone is a bit more impactful. You're getting a 5.16 along with a 3.17. So that's pretty good. I like this change quite a lot, and I'm looking forward to playing more with the card once the OTA drops this Thursday. If you have Infinity Ultron and you're wondering what are some decks that actually make decent use of them, here are the two that I have liked the most up on the screen. The one on the left is the classic Dinesh Hela ramp. Ultron's been pretty interesting in here, using Corvus as a way to get him out early, and kind of give you an alternate game plan. If you don't find the Hela combo stuff you're looking for, Ultron can just do some pretty big things. This deck also makes better use of the Time Stone than a lot of other Ultron decks do, since we have Odin and a bunch of other big things. We're more likely to get value out of that Time Stone, whereas a lot of the other Ultron decks I've tried, it's usually a bit more hit or miss. I've personally played this one quite a bit. I think in its current form, I prefer Legion over Ultron as just a way to like scam games. But I think with the extra 2 power on Ultron, I'll definitely go back to trying this version, because he definitely does add some interesting elements to the deck in terms of a alternate win condition, and I think being a 5/8 will only make that better. My favorite deck of the bunch, though, has been this Quinjet Victoria hand deck. It takes a bit of a different direction than I think a lot of the standard Victoria hand hood stuff goes. This originally started out as a Pixie deck, and I workshopped that a bit before landing on this version. But I really like this as a just fun hand generation deck. You can get out Ultron and the stones early with things like Luna. You have some pretty big 4-drops that buff up power across the board with Kahori and Galacta. The games are pretty variable since we have a bunch of card generation stuff, Snow Guard, Hawkeye, Iron Patriot, and then Gore just is the big dude to close out the game. We also have Copycat, who adds some unpredictable snap lines and just gives us good information about the cards the opponent is not going to get. And then Mobius helps us clean up some of the matchups that otherwise we would have a really hard time into. Things like negative or maybe discard if they're going to be doing the Bullseye Swarm stuff. Mobius has just been a very versatile tech drop. Mobius has just been a very versatile tech card to fill out that 3-drop slot. So if you're looking for something to do with Infinity Ultron, especially after he gets his buff on Thursday, these are 2 lists I can definitely recommend that I see both being improved with the upcoming change. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think about Infinity Ultron. Do you think the buff is going to be enough? Do you think they could also do a little bit of work on improving the stones? What would you like to see? And what other changes are you hoping make its way into the OTA coming this week? Again, usually when they take time off from an OTA due to a event or holidays or something like that, they try and juice up the one beforehand to make it last a little bit longer. So I'm hoping that's what they do here. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.